All right, so I'm making this video for those of you that are always distracted by a shinier object. And I'm talking about learning to play guitar. You're working on something, maybe a scale or a song, and then you see something over here, maybe on Instagram, and you go, oh, that's what I want to learn. And then you get distracted by that, and then you go to something else, and you're just all over the place, but you're not making progress. And it's very frustrating. We're living in weird times now where there's this information overload. When I learned to play guitar back in the late 80s, there was none of this. It was just like if somebody could show you something, that's how you learned how to do everything. So anyway, so there's a part of me that's jealous of it, but then there's another part of me that sees the downside to it. So what I want to do in this video is I want to take a scale pattern that we all know, at least most of us. I'll show you how to play it if you don't know how to play it, but it's the Minor Pentatonic Scale Pattern 1. And I don't want to run you off just yet. We're going to do some cool stuff with it. And we're going to take the Minor Pentatonic Scale Pattern 1, 5 notes, and I want to show you that you can take something that you already know and you can make something meaningful out of it. You don't always have to be looking at the next scale or the next crazy thing in terms of theory, modes, or whatever. You can take those 5 notes and you can make some great sounding music with it. And so we're going to look at 2 different levels of a little song. I've got it kind of a level 1 and a level 2. In this video, we'll actually look at level 2. I'll show you how to play it and we'll talk through it. And I'm going to show you safe notes to land on. I want to show you some scale patterns and some things maybe you haven't thought about when it comes to the minor pentatonic scale. But we're only going to be in pattern 1. We're not going to be playing all over the fretboard, just those 5 notes in that one position. And so if you'd like to get the extra materials that I just mentioned, the level 1 and level 2, I've got the jam track that goes with both and the tablature for all of it so that you can practice playing everything we're going to talk through. You can get those by going to activemelody.com and doing a search for ML142. Okay, so this jam track that we're going to look at is in the key of A. It's a 1-4-5. A, D, and E are the chords. And there is no third. When I made the jam track and played the keyboard and played the rhythm guitar, it's just a root and a fifth. There's no third. And I did that on purpose because we can steer this thing major or minor depending on what we play on top of it. And that's a little hint as to what may be coming next week. So next week I'm going to take the same jam track and show you how to do major stuff with it. And we're just going to kind of keep layering on some things to this jam track. What we're going to talk about is this Minor Pentatonic Scale Pattern 1. I'll put that up on the screen. You can pause the screen and work through that if you don't know it. I'm going to assume most of you know how to play this and know what this is. But the Minor Pentatonic Scale is 5 notes. Now I know some of you are looking at that diagram and you're going, oh, that's more than 5. That's, what is that? That's 12 notes. Well, actually it's 5 because there's a lot of repetition. You know, you're repeating notes in different octaves. So we have the root, which is our A. You have it in 3 spots. So there's 3 of those. And then you got the flat 3, also in 3 spots. You got the 4 in 2 spots. You got the 5 in 2 spots. And you've got the flat 7 in 2 spots. So those are the notes of the Minor Pentatonic Scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After that, it just repeats up the octave. And it just keeps going. So when we look at all these scale positions, it looks like that scale is massive. I remember thinking that when I learned it, but it's actually just a lot of repeated notes. You know, when you're playing an A note here, you can also play the A note up here, and then you can also play it up here. That's one of the unique things about a guitar as opposed to like a piano. A piano has middle C in one spot, but on a guitar, you can have that same C note in multiple spots, right? Same exact pitch and everything, but you know, obviously different spots. Anyway, you know all that. So this Minor Pentatonic Scale, I'd say most of you know it. What I want to show you is some ways that you can use this that maybe you haven't thought about. And so the first thing I want to do is talk about some safe notes to land on. This is always a popular topic with a lot of you, and I never really gave this much thought. When I learned how to play it, I just used my ear to kind of figure out which notes to land on, but I know some of you are a little more methodic. So let's look at this. So we're going to be playing this over a 1-4-5, so it's going to be an A. It's actually going to be A minor sound, even though the jam track is not minor. We'll be playing the Minor Pentatonic Scale, which will color it minor. So it'll be like an A, a D, and an E, or A minor. So the safe note to land on when the jam track is playing over the A, or the 1, is this note. That's your root. That's your A note. You've got one here, and we'll look at one up here. The one up here. We're going to skip this one down here for now. I'm not going to use that just to make it simple. So we're going to look at this one and this one. So I can land on those notes when the jam track is playing the A chord, and it's going to work. I can do whatever I want around that. As long as I kind of resolve to this note and this note, it's going to sound good. Another note I can resolve to over the one chord is the flat 3. That happens a lot too in the blues. So you'll hear, see, that's landing on the root. But listen, you also hear, right? So that works as well, that flat 3. So those are two notes you can just file away, root and the flat 3. Just look at where they are in your pattern 1 of your minor pentatonic scale in this position here. So when you go to the 4 chord, you can land on this note, which is your D note, because it's a D chord, right? So that's your root of your 4 chord. So that's going to work great. The other note that you can land on is the 1 again. So you can always go back to the root for the 4 chord. That makes it easy. That means you can play the same phrase. You can go for the 1, and then when the song goes to the 4, I can play that same phrase. Right? And it's going to work. And that's because this note is also in your D chord. But that doesn't matter. Just look at it this way. You can land on this note or back on the root for the 4 chord. The only other note to think about is the note that we play over the 5 chord, and that is here on the 5th fret 2nd string. That's your E note. You've also got one down here. And what's nice about that is if you play this one with your index finger and this one with your ring finger, your fingers are in the exact position they would be if you played the chord. That's like your E7 chord using that C7 shape. Or if you played the minor pentatonic scale. Look at that, my index finger landed there. My ring finger landed there. So by using those two fingers, they line up perfectly. So that's it. It's really that simple. So you land on your root for the 1. You land on the D or the 4 for your 4 chord or the root. And you land here for the 5. Now what you do in between is the magic. And it's really not so much those notes that you're landing on that make it sound cool. It's all the little fills and things you play in between those notes that color the thing. So if this is my goal, to land on this note, this A note, I could play something like this. Look at that. Now I'm playing notes of the minor pentatonic scale. I'm not going to use any notes that are not in minor pentatonic scale pattern 1. But I'm just playing down a little scale pattern. And I'm going to give more examples of different scale patterns that you can use. A scale pattern is when you're playing down the scale in some kind of a pattern. I guess it's sort of in the name, right? But if for example, here's a common one, where you play down 4 notes, and then you go back to the top, but instead of going to the note you started with, you go to the next one down. And then you go back to the next one down. And so when you put that together, you string them together, it sounds like this. And you get these really cool little scale runs. And the trick is doing a pattern like that, and it doesn't have to be fast. You could do them slow. You could go, and you could do slow and fast. You go. The trick, though, is landing on your target notes. And that is where the magic happens. If you can do that, if you can put the patterns together and then land on your note where you're supposed to, like as the jam track gets to the note, you've got everything you need to be able to play and improvise and have fun just staying in one position. Let me put on this jam track and I'm going to demonstrate some of the stuff we've just talked through. Okay, so I have the jam track playing, which is, there's my 1 chord, here's the 4 chord, which is the D, back to the A, which is the root. And now I'm just going to play those root notes. Okay, so there's my D note, safe notes to land on. That's all we're starting with. Back to the root. And then here's the 5, remember it's right here. The 4, and then back to the root. Now let's do some variations on this, because I showed you some other notes that would work. So from the root, you can also play that flat 3. I mentioned that. So let's watch. Here's the flat 3. Now here's the 4. And I said I could play this or the root. So for the 4 chord, I could play the A note or the D note. Now here's the 5. All the way down to the low 5 of I've also got this A note here. So let's take those pieces then and start to play them with some fills in between. Now those fills can be fast or slow. They don't have to be fast. You could play it nice slow. See, that works slow. So here's what one of those scale patterns might sound like. Notice I just had to time it so that I land on this. I can do whatever I want as long as I land on these notes. So it makes it easy. It takes really takes a lot of the thoughts out of it, or the head work out of it. So I landed on the high A. I can play two notes at once if I want. See that little scale pattern? But it works as long as I land on the right note. All right, so now that I've demonstrated that and you understand at least theoretically what's going on, let me give you some real examples of some actual licks. I'll put the tab up on the screen. I'll show you how to play them so that you can use these in your playing. So let's listen to this first phrase. Okay, so this first lick goes like this. So this is obviously just minor pentatonic scale pattern 1, but we're starting by sliding into that safe note, which works over the 1 chord, and it comes in right on the 1. So when you're playing along with the jam track, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, right on the 1. And I'm sliding from this 5th fret to the 7th fret on the 4th string into this A note. And then after that, there's a little half bend there. Anytime you play the flat 3, this is sort of a pro tip when it comes to blues. Anytime you're playing the flat 3, push it slightly sharp. You just do. You're always kind of nudging that note towards the major third, even in a minor context. The blues guys do it, and it gives you a much more authentic bluesy sound. And so when you grab that note, just kind of push it a little bit. Just push it a little sharp. So it sounds like this. So there's the root. I do the bend. You don't hear the release. I just let the tension down and I mute the strings with my right hand like this, and then go. So it's a hammer on then between that 5th fret and 7th fret on the 3rd string. And then watch this. So after this, we're going to go down to the 4th string and play 7, 5, 7 on, going down to the 5th string there, and then a hammer onto our root note like this. So all together that phrase goes 2, 3, 4. So remember, if any of these lead runs are too fast for you, I do have an alternate version of this solo, which is all tabbed out and it doesn't have any of the little fast lead runs. All right, so at this point in the jam track, we're just hanging out on the A, and I played. And all I'm doing there is a little double stop here, strings 2 and 3 on the 5th fret. And just remember where this is in your minor pentatonic scale pattern 1. And it's just a very commonly used double stop that you hear. And actually, you can still pull that flat 3. Even though you're doing a double stop like that, you can pull that a little bit sharp. I'm always working that string when I play it. again, resolving though and landing on that A, the root note. So now the song goes to the 4 chord, which is our D, and I played this phrase. Notice the note that I landed on though. It wasn't the D. I could have landed on that note, but I focused on the A note. And I've mentioned this already, that you can land on the D or the A for the 4 chord. You can land on the 4 note or the root, I should say. So that phrase, I'm just keeping that bar there on the 5th fret, strings 2 and 3 are what I'm focusing on. Do a hammer onto the 7th fret 3rd string, and then an upstroke on that 5th fret 2nd string. And let those 2 notes clash out. I just love the sound of that, this sound. Especially with a little overdrive. It's just a very cool sound. And then, so after that, we're gonna do a hammer on again to that 7th fret 3rd string, and then landing on the A note. All right, so now the jam track is still staying on the 4 chord, which is our D, and about to go back to the 1 chord. But while it's still on the D, I play this. It sounds complicated, but it's pretty simple actually. It's just one of these little scale patterns. And all I was thinking about as I'm playing it is I'm just trying to land on the A note when the jam track goes back to the A. So I know that the song is still on the 4 chord. I can do whatever I want over that 4 chord, as long as I can play as many notes as I want, as long as the note that I land on on the 1, when the jam track gets to the 1, as long as I land on that or that. There's all kinds of different ways I could have phrased that as long as I landed on that A, but I'll leave the tab up on the screen. You can pause the screen and work it out exactly if you want. And remember, as a premium member, you have the on-screen tab viewer, and you can print off the tab PDF if you want. But here it is. I'll play through it slowly. Let me do it one more time. All right, so after that phrase, I concluded it with, that's just walking right down the pentatonic. Notice I'm going from this A down to this A, and I'm using the exact notes of the minor pentatonic scale to get there. And that's one of those ideas that hopefully will stick with you, where you go, oh, it doesn't have to be some complicated thing like a scale pattern. It could just be, you could just go right down the scale, as long as you can time it out so that you can land on the right notes at the right time. And then while the song hangs out on that A chord, I played this sort of Albert King style little phrase to kind of wrap it up. And I went, and I like this because it's pretty easy and it's really just kind of playing down the scale. So the only note, actually, I guess I started with a note that was out of scale. If you want to count that, I really tried to stick to only the notes of the pentatonic, but I did start a half step down and slid into place. So, I mean, I guess that's technically a note out of scale. But anyway, you can see what I'm doing is I'm playing strings 1 and 2 on that 5th fret. And then after this, I went. So after I hit that A note up here, I'm just going to walk down the scale. And then I come down to the 7th fret 3rd string and do a full bend. So it's. And then I came to that flat 3 again. And then I concluded that lick by capping it off, I guess, with that A note down here. right, so now the jam track goes to the 5 chord, and remember the notes that we target for the 5 chord. This note or this note, right? And those are your 2 E notes because it's an E chord. So we're targeting those root notes for the 5 chord. And what I played, it's a real classic kind of, almost a Clapton-y kind of lick, like early, like Blues Breakers Clapton. But what I'm playing is right down the scale. I mean, it's just with a bend and release in there. So I'm starting on the 5th fret 2nd string, and then I'm gonna do a bend here on the 8th fret 2nd string, and then come up to this A note up here on the 5th fret 1st string. Now from here, I'm just gonna walk down the scale. Watch this. Bend, release. Walked all the way down to this 5. Remember, that's the note we were targeting. So that's all I had in my head was this note. And actually I started with it up here. So I could do whatever I want. I can't stress that enough. And it's very freeing once you can start to get your timing down and you can work in other licks. So try going and working in other licks to time it out so that you land on the note that you're trying to hit. All kinds of different ways we could do it. That time I timed it wrong, but that's okay. Sometimes the pros time it wrong. You just got to learn how to recover. I think I just did a lesson on that. How do you pull the car out of the ditch? Anyway, so that's the lick. So then after the 5 chord, the song goes to the 4 chord, which is our D. That's the note I'm gonna try and hit, right? And I played this, right? And then I went like this. And that got me to the A. And I just sort of, it timed out so that I played that note as the A comes in. Now notice what I was doing there. By playing that little phrase kind of going back and forth, I was just waiting for the timing to work out. And that happens. That's just sort of how this works. So you can just go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, kind of waiting for it to show up. Right? And then once it gets there, you can land on it. So when I started that lick, I landed on the D note, right? Because the jam track was playing over the D. After that, I went right back to trying to hit the 1 chord. Right? And just kind of noodling around until the jam track gets there. And I'll, with the tab on the screen, you can learn it exactly the way I did it. And that's the idea of playing these licks over the jam track. But the cool thing is, there wasn't anything in this that was revolutionary. This was stuff you already know. So you don't always have to be looking for the next, sort of shiny object. I mean, sometimes the best stuff you can do is stuff you already have. You've got the tools. You just need to learn how to use them and how to really focus on using a few notes to really express yourself. I mean, that's what most of your heroes do. It's not like our blues heroes were getting into advanced modal theory. They were just playing what they felt, and they used a few notes to really express, but they changed the world with that. So it's very powerful taking, a simple tool like the minor pentatonic scale, just one position. You don't have to be all over the fretboard. Just kind of focus on that. Get the sounds, get those safe notes to land on. Then you can start branching out. So next week, we're going to take a look at doing that. We're going to take the same jam track, and I'm going to layer on the major pentatonic scale. Different sounds, but when you start to combine it with the minor pentatonic, you can really start to enhance your playing. And so we'll talk about some of that and some other notes that you can land on and all those things. So I'll give you other ideas. So come back next week. And if you haven't subscribed to the Active Melody YouTube channel, now would be a great time to do that. It's free. You just click the button and make sure you click the alert bell, and then you can be notified when I put out new lessons, which I do every week. Oh, and leave a comment if you've had any sort of groundbreaking ideas in this. I know it was just the minor pentatonic scale, but sometimes these simple scales and things that we already know can have all these things that we just didn't think about. And I always like to hear that. It helps me, and it also gives me ideas for future lessons. So if you could leave a comment, I would really appreciate that. All right, we'll see you next week.